We've got a treat today. We've got a treat for you today. Have you ever, Gary, questioned your existence?
My life choices.
Have you ever questioned your life choices in a run? Do you ever think, I wish I was as fast as Billy John Bowe in my running club? Are you ever disappointed in your race performances? Do you find it hard to do sessions? Can we call him the resident sports psychologist now? I mean, you didn't sign up for that, but I think you pretty much bought into the whole vibe. We put all those questions to leading sports psychologist Stu Holliday. We have some Patreon questions, but we also sort of reflect on our own journeys as runners. And I love it that he is a practicing runner and a dad as well. So we touch on a lot of themes that we feel are both in our everyday training, but in racing as well. And a lot of it sort of reverberated with us, didn't it? Of that, yeah, we felt that, or we know people that feel like that. So we're hoping there's a couple of little gems in there that you might pull on that thread and go, that's a little mantra I need, or that's what I need to work on as well. Because let's face it, we all love running. There is very little barrier between putting the trainers on, apart from it's cold and it's dark. Once we get outside, we love going running. But those little, as he talks about, the pillars of performance are the really tricky bits, especially in the winter, to do the strength and conditioning, the good fueling when it's cold, and working on our minds. Because as I talked quite near at the beginning, it's mile 80 when there's nothing left of you apart from the raw version of yourself. And are you going to be able to work, Gary, mile 150 of Northern Traverse? It's just you, little shell.
I'm not thinking about that just yet.
Are you going to be your biggest cheerleader, or are you going to be, what would be the opposite of a cheerleader? Yeah, more of a, who's the person that talks you down? I don't know.
Yourself.
Yeah, yourself. It's those two different sides of you, isn't it? It's a bit of the devil and the angel on your shoulders, and it's listening to that devil voice but not acting on it is so hard. A lot of the sports psychology is so hard, isn't it? And we're so good at talking about it. You and I talk a great game with him. We're like, yeah, we're great at that. But actually putting into practice, doing sessions, and the voice that's in our head a lot of the time, it's everyday work, and everybody will reflect on that. So hopefully we might even be able to entice him back for future episodes, perhaps before just a big race, not mentioning any big races.
That would be very useful. Yeah, hopefully some evergreen nuggets in the next hour. Hope you enjoy our chat with Stu Holliday. I'm not too sure if you've listened for a while, but we put your name into AI software and it comes up with a nice intro for you. So hopefully all those massive data banks churning out, is it silly images of people, what they would look like as a Viking or a 1980s footballer? This is what AI is for.
Yeah.
So just to give you a warning, my full name is Stuart W. Holliday, and there was a senator in George Bush's government, in the second George Bush. I often get email for him. I've connected with him on LinkedIn to say, can you give me, who should I forward your emails onto that keep coming to me?
My goodness.
So if it's the case that I hear a lot about, the Republican Party.
Okay. I wondered, I thought, gosh, he's a dad, he's a runner, he's full-time job, and he's also really big into
American politics. Yeah,
American politics.
So if you fed it into AI and it suddenly brings out stuff about being a senator, then we'll know you've gone a little bit awry.
I think it's got the right guy. Welcome back to the show where we lace up. It's a trifecta this week. We've got to lace up, a lean in and a dig deep, not just into the trails, but into the terrain of the mind. Today's guest is someone who knows that endurance isn't just physical, it's psychological. Stu Holliday is a sports psychologist, a coach, and a quiet force in the world of mental resilience. Whether he's helping athletes navigate burnout, guiding clients through life's tougher climbs, or unpacking the emotional roller coaster of modern life, Stu brings clarity, compassion, and a no-nonsense approach that cuts through the noise. We'll talk about the inner critic, the chimp that hijacks our thinking, and why your brain sometimes feels like it's running an ultra without telling you. Expect practical tools, a few laughs, and maybe a moment or two where you realise, yep, that's me he's talking about. So grab a brew, settle in, and let's explore what it really means to go the distance with your mind as your strongest muscle.
Wow, that's an intro.
Yeah.
First up, Stu, a warm welcome from the Tea and Trails podcast. And we love these episodes because I think maybe all of our listeners will have had a mental battle at some point when it comes to running.
Every
You've probably
day.
got training anxiety, you've got race anxiety, you've got during the race, maybe that dialogue can be negative at times, injury, comparison. I think that's quite popular at the moment. They all spring to mind. Also, it did come up last week with John and Shirley from Hardmoor as the biggest reason why people would DNF a race would be their head has gone. So we've got loads to cover there. Hopefully we've got time to cover all those subjects. But first of all, we ask all our guests, where are you? What's the view from your window? And yeah, we know you've not been for a run today, but yeah, what have you got planned today?
I'm based in Manchester in a wonderful area called Whalley Range, which is the world's first suburb, apparently. For anyone interested, there was a great article on The Mill, which is an online Manchester magazine that everyone should read. It's really near the centre of Manchester, but it's a conservation area, so I actually look out on trees. Obviously, the ones that have got a few leaves left, beautifully yellow, orange. There's a school in the background, and the kids have just gone in from playtime. Training-wise, as I said to you before we recorded, I am a full-time parent and obviously running this business. I'm part of the Olympic swimming programme, so I'm pulled around the country to Loughborough, Bath, and here in Manchester. So training is always fitted in, and my session today is just a track session to try and compensate for a lack of mileage and a lack of speed, and try and put some zip in these legs to keep me somewhat competitive. And as we were saying, I would dearly love to be traipsing on a hill somewhere. Probably my nearest accessible run, which is brilliant, and I'd love to be doing, if you gave me the choice right now, would be get in the car, or the train obviously, drive to Macclesfield and go around Mac Forest and Tegsnose. It's a really great run up in beautiful scenery. You get to see the Cheshire Matterhorn, which is a little hill called Shutlingslow, and you get to see for miles, and it's beautiful.
We've got Rosebery Top, and they call that the Matterhorn of the North too. Excellent. So what would a week look like for you? I'm curious, I looked at your Power of 10, so I saw lots of 5Ks, but have you got anything in the books, any trails or fell races?
No. And I was telling you that like two of my favourite fell races that are here, usually they're summer races. Winter running in outside here would be cross country, which I've not done for years. If I had a choice, I would do Harrock Hill near Blackburn, which is beautiful, and that's where you can win a box of veg if you finish in your age category in the top three, or the Barrel Inn fell race out in Eam. That they would be two go-to local races held in summer. Really good participation and great to be midweek. They're midweek races. You get to go out after work and use the long nights to see beautiful scenery, and then come back and then go to work the next day. It sort of breaks up the week if you go and do something like that.
Are they the classic? I love a fell race where you turn up, there's somebody in the car, they probably wound the window down, you hand them a fiver, you run up the biggest peak, and then you come back. Is that the kind of classic style?
Yeah, that's it.
I suppose a good place to start this conversation is a bit about your journey and why you became a sports psychologist.
Well, it's good that running's kind of the thread that we're talking about here, because it probably somewhat goes there. So growing up, I was a very athletic, active kid. I was on my bike all the time. I played football from going to school, in the morning before school, at break, at lunch, after school. And what I lacked in talent, I made up for enthusiasm. And I had a good engine on me even back then, but I didn't realise it. I didn't really do much in the way of athletics growing up. I just got more into cycling, both for leisure and pleasure as I got a bit older. I did the classic thing, 20s, probably living a bit more of an unhealthy lifestyle, working and living in London. And then girlfriend was doing marathon training and said, come and help me out, come and join me for runs, and gradually got sucked into doing a 10K. Ultimately, my first marathon, London 2007, when running wasn't quite the cool thing it is now. I ran for Mind, which, there's a thread here. I raised about £1,500. I got one of those charity places. I'd already done a psychology degree, and I'd literally the year before gone back, having been working in tech for 10 years, I was really keen to scratch the itch of what I did for my own psychology practice. I was always intending to go back to the discipline. I just didn't know which way to go. So I did a weekend summer course in counselling skills in Brixton, that well-known fell running hotspot. I didn't do any running when I was down at doing the counselling course, but it really talked to me about, like, this is the field I want to be going back towards. The next year I was getting fit and doing training. I joined Victoria Park Harriers in London, who race around the beautiful Victoria Park and have a clubhouse there. They encouraged me to go to track, and as I went to track, I was working with Chris Sarr, who was Perry Shakes Drayton's coach when she was a 400 metre and hurdler. And he said, if you're doing sports psychology, we could do with your skills in the changing room, you know, like when I'm talking to the athletes. And I started my masters, and I did that as my experience. I went and worked not with distance runners but with sprinters. So running was there. I was doing my own distance running at the time. I got to go to quite a few events. Like, I got to go and meet Bruce Tullow, who's a legendary coach, sadly no longer with us, but he was one of the first people to run across America in the 60s. His wisdom about running is very much in that kind of Richard Asquith, feet in the clouds status, about how you can optimize your training, have the mindset for training. As I did my masters, carried on running, and luckily enough, a few years later, when I was still doing work in tech and doing sports psych hours to get my practice up, got a job with Steve Peters, the Chimp Paradox author, after London 2012. I was thrown into Olympic archery, Paralympic swimming, England Netball Team, Liverpool Football Club academy we were talking about beforehand. And it gave me lots of rounded skills about working with different kinds of people, different kinds of athletes, different kinds of mindset, and exposure to elite sport. With running, I just find fascinating is all those things you said that your trail runners and fell runners go through. Everyone knows it is a battle of the mind. You know, if you talk about people with cross country going in, you know, the season's starting back up now. Everyone can run the distance who does cross country. That's not even up for doubt. But it's always a battle of mental will to go to cross country, to execute cross country running. It's, you know, people don't talk about the physical side as much. They talk about how much of a slog it is, how much of a challenge it is to get through the conditions, to keep up with the fast people, or just get round. Even with my now experience doing Olympic swimming work, I still love endurance sport. It's my passion. I've got my own consultancy where predominantly I work with endurance runners, triathletes, cyclists. That's my cohort. And so I've just built a practice over the past 7 years doing that, since I left Steve's company. Interestingly, when I went into doing that endurance psychology work, predominantly it was road runners. More and more, I just get more and more trail and ultra, because the sport's growing so much, and I've had some top people from the ultra scene work with me, because it's not really something that they've accessed. So I can't talk about who they are, but I'm sure your listeners would know them if I did use those names. I've worked with very high level amateur people as well. Yeah, and that's the kind of people who want to win those battles of the mind on a desolate hillside somewhere in the lakes or Wales or wherever.
You mentioned so many different sports there. Are there principles that would apply? I suppose the post and the pre-event could be quite similar, but you have sports like Luke Littler, you know, darts player, 100-metre sprinter, or then you've got ultra runners who could be in the trenches for days. Vastly different. What it takes to do the sport itself is vastly different. But yeah, I'm just curious if there's a thread through all of them.
If anyone's ever worked with me or heard me talk, they'll probably roll their eyes at this, but I've always talked about pillars of performance. And I was talking with a swim and pool side yesterday in Loughborough about this. If you break down what the activity is you're doing, you've got your aerobic work, the training you do, the efforts you do. You've got your nutrition. And obviously in trail and ultra, we hear the common refrain that it's an eating contest with some running involved. It's really necessary to keep yourself well fueled if you're doing 1.5 day events or what have you. Then you've got strength and conditioning, which is absolutely key, I think, in distance running. And again, when I was starting back into 2006, 2007, the idea of going to the gym to develop your strength for running was still quite a new thing. It seems a lot more embedded now. It gives you injury prevention. It helps you out with more power out on the hills. Then you've got recovery, which when you're putting so many long runs together, you've got to recover. And, there's an art to recovery. And that sort of steps into my world, of course. Then you get the psychology piece. And everyone who is a runner says, well, it's a very mental thing. And the thing which I always keep coming back to is, for something that everyone says is so key, how many people actually do anything about it? Have a mental training plan like they have a strength conditioning plan, or work at those skills as much as they might do 2 sessions a week in the gym, or have plans for how they're going to manage themselves in races. And they're the common things which we see in endurance. And I guess like most sport, darts is not going to have like much aerobic work. But there are certain key things that you've got to have in place generally in sport. The mental piece it's always been coming up more and more since I've been in the field. In certain sports, it's very well established. So you won't be surprised to hear archery, where I'd first started my career professionally, they've had sports psychologists since 80s, 90s, because it's such a mental sport, and it's so, obviously it's very, very physical. The load that you pull through your shoulders is unbelievable if you've never held a proper archery bow, but it is on the day a very mental sport.
I think one of the problems with ultra running is often the mental battle, and it's a bit like the nutrition battle as well. You don't find yourself on the battlefield until you're in a race, and it's very hard to recreate those feelings in training. Whereas things that are shorter, explosive sports, you can put yourself in that mindset, you can practice the drills. You see the tennis servers, don't you? They do the same before they serve. They have that drill, but you can't get yourself into hour 11, 12 of an ultra run every day and know what battle you're going to face until you're there. And often, especially people that are new to ultra running, they've not felt those feelings or been so present with themselves until they're actually in it. And then they realize, holy camoli, I never felt this before. And it's quite a frightening place to be, to sort of, I call it meet your destiny a bit, but to be so raw, to be so tired, or to have such a long way to go. We don't have that in training to reinforce every day. Is that something that you find you come up against you with people that are doing endurance events, that actually practicing the mental strategy? Or do you go, well, actually you can practice that mental strategy every day, you just need to look to your training?
I often keep coming back to a phrase, train as you intend to compete. And obviously what you can't do in trail and ultra, where it's a 11 or 12 hour race, is be going out and replicating that 5 times a week, because you'd just be absolutely shattered. But certainly people who are doing training for trail and ultra are often doing at least one long run a week, and it will have its challenges in there. It might not be 11 hours. It could be 3, 4, 5. It is about getting into a certain practice discipline, whatever you want to call it. And I want people to set their mindsets about how they want to execute a session. How do you mentally prepare for it? What do you think might be the things that you're gonna face, even on a smaller scale to that big event? And what are you gonna practice if it starts to get hard, for instance? That's a classic one. How are you intending to mentally be present, or if it goes a little bit sideways, bring yourself back to how you want to be? So you talked about, for instance, a sprinter on 100 meters only has to psych up for 10 or 11 seconds, as opposed to 10 or 11 hours for ultra. But that said, that sprinter, it is such a battle of wills with the mind and against your opponents that you've got to get it right. You can't really win the 100 meters if you don't win the mind. But equally, if you're going out and you're doing a really big race which matters, you should definitely be working out what are the areas, every trail runner's experience that I've struggled with in the past. What might be an area or something where you need to work at your mentality in order to get better. And it could just be how you talk to yourself. It could be about how you cope under pressure, that kind of thing. So I definitely think there's a role to be had. I've heard a couple of the top trail runners recently, and they've talked about working with sports psychologists. So it's definitely happening at the top end. And I always say, if you want to get better at your discipline, what are those areas where you've got potential to grow? Maybe you're really into your food and nutrition and you've got that locked down, but what about your mental game? Is that as on point? Could you increase and improve performance?
I wonder if there is a little bit of a stigma attached to it, and people think it is just for the elites, because I wouldn't think twice if I had the kind of financial means to pay for it, to approach a dietitian or a coach But maybe, yeah, the psychology side of it is probably something I wouldn't gravitate towards. I'm curious, you mentioned, we talked about cross country. I'm quite kind to myself actually during a race itself, but I get a lot of anxiety during training and definitely cross country. Maybe it's the team element. I'm not too sure what it is. Any tips? There'll be loads of our listeners that will experience similar things. Any tips for listeners out there?
Yeah, I mean, you've definitely said about before races, it's very common, if not the norm, to have pre-race anxiety. I would say, are you maximizing how those 1 hour, 10 minutes prior to a race, are you managing yourself as best as you can? If not, what could you be doing differently? And often, there's people who come to me, it's one of the most common things. I really suffer with pre-race anxiety. It's so bad that then when I do the race that I've trained for, I don't execute it well because I'm so caught up in my head with, the worries I have pre-race. And that feels like a real shame and a lost opportunity, because if you've gone out and spent 6, 8, 10 weeks training for something and then it sort of falls apart because you haven't managed to have and I'm not criticizing people for this, but they haven't worked at that or anticipated it. It feels such a loss and not a waste, but a missed opportunity, perhaps, should we say. And so I'd definitely be saying, if you're talking, Gary, about your experience, it's not your first rodeo. You'll have experienced the same thing many, many times over. What's it like being in your head on the race line? What are the common things that come up? Is it worries about competitors? Is it worries about your physical state? Often people are worried about, their stomach and like what could happen. As my old professor Andy Lanes at Wolverhampton said, there's a reason why they put all those toilets next to the start of a race. And understanding what's going on in your head is the first bit, and then what might be a more optimal way of thinking on the start line in order to help give you the possibility of having the kind of performance that your training has warranted. So often people come to me and they go, I'm really upset. It's the third, fourth, fifth time it's happened. I've trained really well and I can't convert that training into the race scenario. And I'm like, right, okay, great. You've worked out what the problem is. Let's get down on to the brass tacks and work out a plan for you. There's a consistency there because you've consistently not been good at the start, and it's a learned behavior. We can undo that, pick it apart and put in place the right plan that works for you. The thing when I've worked successfully with people that comes through is, I used to be in pieces on the start line. Now I'm really confident and I feel like I'm going to go and have a good race, so I'm going to give my all on the day.
I think the experience is great. I know now that even though I do feel anxious on the start line, and maybe, I'll employ little tactics like I'll just distract myself. I'll go and talk to somebody or something like that. Maybe go and do a warm-up or whatever it is. And some races, they're quite nice. Say Lakeland 100 is a great example. You go and sit in a hall and do a race brief for half an hour before the race. But yeah, I also know that when the gun goes, all of those negative emotions at least disappear. This sounds like I'm basically got a free hour with a psychologist. And this will apply to other people, though. I think sometimes, I mentioned on the podcast, I don't think I've ever really performed as well as I could. Maybe the central governor system is protecting me from pushing maybe as hard as I could, fear of blowing up, whatever it is. I'm not too sure what that is exactly, what is holding me back.
I mean, the central governor is a popular model to describe where we need to mentally go in under pressure situations such as races. So for anyone who doesn't know what the central governor is, it's a professor in South Africa called Tim Noakes, who years ago came up with the concept that the limitation to successful performance wasn't in our bodies and how we might hit the wall physically. It's much more in our head. The analogy he always used was on a car, on a petrol gauge where it says you're about to go in the red. The brain sees that and panics and says, right, well, we don't want to drive, lose all our energy, so we'll back off. But actually, that with a car, if you go into the red, you've still got 50 miles with which you can get to a petrol station.
80, Stu. I always go 80.
Okay, 80. I just picked a random number. Forgive me. And so what that's saying is the best athletes trained, let's say Kenyans, they know this, and so they're willing to hit the override switch and like push through the pain, push through the fear, and they get the kinds of results where they slow less than an amateur. Other models are available, and people like Samuele Makora, who's an old colleague from a project I did a few years ago, they've got different ways in which the cat is skinned, but effectively it's that same ability to push through the pain. And again, I work with people, athletes, to work out how can you push and keep going and overcome the negative thoughts that want you to slow down without putting you in danger, because that's the most important thing for psychologists. We don't want to hurt people. And so it's coming up with strategies in order to be able to manage those uncomfortable thoughts and still try and maintain a very good pace without backing off and having that kind of result of like, oh, there I've gone again. You know, I've not executed in the final third of a race.
Do you think that's natural as well? Do you think it's a sort of genetic disposition as well, that some people can just go into that red zone naturally and some people have that switch that is really hard to turn on?
I think the majority of the people in the world have that, because the brain's job is to protect you. So it's logical that when we're fatigued, under pressure and about to fall apart, the brain's saying, hold on, we need to protect you, slow down. There are people who, if you get into the real science side of it, I don't know if you know the guy, the rock climber Alex Honnold. They did an experiment sticking him in an fMRI scanner to see how he approached fear and pain, and he seemingly didn't have the same level of fear that, dare I say, normal people have. And they were saying maybe that's what gives him the edge with able to do these crazy rock climbing, free climbing stunts that would cripple with fear the majority of people. But I just think let's work at like standard normal human behavior, because that's our audience. We've all got the capability to push through that pain barrier. You know, as long as you're working with a coach and you know what your safety limits are, everyone's got potential to dig deeper, go harder. When you read things like Inside a Marathon by Scott Foble and Ben Rosario, Scott Foble was an American marathoner. I think he's sort of retired now, but a good few years ago, he was training with the Hokanaz Elite out in Arizona. Beautiful part of the world in Flagstaff. And he came 7th in the New York Marathon. And he had mantras like, you can go harder, Scott. You can go deeper. And he learned to work with his off switch. And he was always perceived by coaches and other athletes as someone who had a capability to suffer better or more than other marathon runners. And I would argue that although you might not get to a Scott Foble level of being able to hit that override switch, everyone's got the ability to push themselves harder than they think they can right now.
I always think it's fascinating when you see, it's mainly triathlon or even the marathon, where you just see people, they've literally gone over the limits and they staggering towards. I could never imagine being that person.
That's my dream.
Whether you scooped off the tarmac and put in the medical tent.
Yeah, every race. Sure, we've got a couple of questions from our lovely patrons. First one's from Charlie Ember. I'm a very, capital letters, amateur runner, not having tackled anything tougher than a road half. I'd say that's one of the toughest races to tackle, Charlie. Horrendous. Yeah. But I feel like my brain has defeated me in races more often than my body has. Certain challenges just get in my head, and instead of motivating me to push myself, it's like I decide weeks before the race that I'm going to have an awful time, and then surprise, surprise, I do, and then spend the rest of the run berating myself for my crappy performance and crappy attitude. I want to embrace positive affirmations and push myself, but I'm such a cynic that they just feel empty to me. Have you found other ways to motivate stubborn, cynical grumps like me that have been effective? I found that races I've really enjoyed and done well in have been the ones where I've had company to keep me out of my own head, but I'm training for a few tougher events next year. Well, I will definitely be on my own, so I need to get my head in check if I don't want to ruin them for myself. I think this resonates with so many people, talking ourselves out of races before they've started, and then during the race, the whole dialogue of the race being, you're not doing well enough, look at you.
So what I'd be saying to someone like Charlie is, this goes back to your question, how can you train the psych side of things so that you have better races? Well, actually, it sounds like his description there is the problem isn't so much in the racing, it's in the training. And he's not sat back and thought through, what does optimal training for me look like? Forget the race, because that's going to happen anyway if you're booked into it. It's about staying in like, what are you doing today? What are you doing this week? What's the goal and the targets? I always get my athletes to think about what's the purpose of the session that you're actually doing here. So Charlie might just be doing a recovery run, or he could be doing a track session, or he could be doing a hilly session, right? On a hilly session, you've probably got to brace yourself that you've got to, it's going to be a lot of huff and puff up the mountain, and then on the way down you've got quite a lot of quad pain, you know, like
I was going to say, my knees,
on the way down.
knees.
Yeah. Now, if you want to squeeze the juice out of that session, the thing that you should be doing is like saying, it's going to be hard, it's going to be challenging, let's lean into the benefit that this is going to give me on the actual big event. Because if I can execute this really, really well in training, I'm going to be more confident when I come to do the hill stuff in 6 weeks' time or whatever it might be. And it's shifting away from a can't do mindset, a fear-based mindset, to a challenge-based mindset. And it sounds like there's quite a bit of fear in that question, like, fear of blowing up, fear of it hurting. The first thing you've got to recognize, and like this is where elite athletes have a difference over more amateur contemporaries, is that they accept that the pain threshold is going to be there if you want to get the result that you want. And they just take that as more as read. If you just want to participate and get round, there's nothing wrong with that. And recognize the kind of athlete you are. If you're someone who just wants to be out on the fells, enjoy it, and not push yourself so you feel physically sick, or like we've been describing about that central governor, that's fine, go and do that. But if you're someone who's got that edge to them and they're like, no, I'm willing to suffer because I want to kind of get a time, position, ranking, whatever it might be, you're going to have to suck it up and do it. So let's get to there first. And then when you think about your session, absolutely, like, look at what the purpose of the session is, how it's going to feed forward to the future version of you. You can deal with the pain and the discomfort. Dare I say, when you finish, you might even reward yourself and pat yourself on the back. And if you do that, then you're going to be more confident when it comes to the race. So it's always about just like changing the narrative. And it can be hard for people because if you've been doing it for years, they've kind of got a pattern that they're so used to, and unwinding that is tough.
I hear the same chat probably goes on in the rest of their life as well. It's not just their running. If people find generally just the little bit negative self-talk goes on most of the day, then it's just constantly reinforcing that, isn't it? It's not just in the running that chatter's going on. It might be in...
I mean, I can't speak for people I don't know, but I mean, I do see that. But equally, this is something you're investing your time and money and free leisure time to do. How do you want to look back at it when you've hung your race shoes up and you're sat doing something different, or you're not running at all? How do you want to look back at it? Do you want to have regrets of saying, oh God, if I just pushed myself, I could have had better races. If I'd worked at my mindset, I might not have got massively further at the field, but I could have done a few places better. And overall, the thing that comes through is actually results don't, when people stop doing the sport they do, they don't look so much at the results. They look at how well they manage themselves. A friend of mine was a bronze medal winner in Atlanta Games, and the thing he looks back at is not the medal and the achievement he got with it, but he says he's really proud of all the training he did through his career, and he gave everything to it, and he's really proud that he's demonstrated that to himself, forgetting other people. Don't have any regrets, and that might be a good starting point for someone like Charlie. Like, put yourself in retirement from your sport. How do you want to look back at this? Because you can change it.
What happens if it all goes wrong, Stu, and we've done the race and it didn't pan out? Maybe it's a DNF. This is a big theme that comes up, is coping after a DNF. Things have gone wrong mentally. What do you advise your athletes to do? Sort of like, I bet you have a sort of strategy of like week after. How do you deal with that? It's horrible when things don't, you built up to some big thing and then it doesn't work out how you planned.
And again, I was talking with another practitioner about this, and we were saying in a similar scenario, how long to give someone to throw a pity party. And it's funny. Sulking? Yeah, we did actually say a week's about the right amount of time.
Yeah.
Because if you use the Chimp model, effectively the Chimp's been the part of your brain that said stop, and then as soon as you stop, the Chimp's going, why did you stop? And so you got this contradiction, and the more that you do these events, the more you actually understand about yourself. And if you look at running and your endurance as a journey for self-understanding, a DNF is a pain in the butt, and we've all had one or two, whether it's been through injury, through self. It's one race. You mentioned about power of 10. It will be one race or two races in the whole litany of all the different events that you do, and it doesn't define you. Paula Radcliffe DNF'd, and no one says Paula Radcliffe's a rubbish athlete. And so, by all means, step off the course, accept that you're going to feel crappy, give yourself a week. What I'd do if I was working with you is let the Chimp have its scream, let it get all emotional, and then we say, right, you got to put a time box on that, stop that, and now you've let it all out. What are we going to reflect on? What happened in that race? What went well? What didn't? Why did you think you stopped? And how can we put a plan together? Maybe with yourself, maybe with your coach, and work out a way forward so that you can go and do maybe probably a smaller event, a less intense one with less pressure on it. Just get around. That would be the first thing, is like, go and do a race where you finish. Maybe put in place a few skills where you can gain a little bit more confidence, get back on the bike, and then go from there. And beyond that, I wouldn't overanalyze it, because I think if you try and put together the mega plan after the big DNF, you're setting up such a high bar that you probably mentally, physically won't reach.
You're not ready for it. I always say no big decisions. No big decisions.
But it's quite tempting, isn't it?
Yeah,
Literally.
Don't press that entry button. Do not press that entry button.
Or put the entry button on something so low key, like the turkey trot around your local village at Christmas. Where it's
those are high stakes. Those races. There's family honour to be had.
Yeah, but often it's like having fun.
But you don't get kudos for that. I suppose this might bring us on to comparison. I get so much from a smaller race, but yeah, with the social media, the Strava, the comparison, I think it does steal a lot of joy for athletes out there.
Yeah. And it's sadly become much more prevalent. We were talking beforehand about starting running 15, 20 years ago. We didn't have social media like we do now. It wasn't a thing. And it's sadly just a bit more of a reflection on the state of where we are, that, it's all about putting yourself out there, whether it's on a social media app or it's on Strava, and people feel that like they're being watched and looked at and judged. That's the thing. It's fear of judgment. What will my club mates say? What will my running buddies say? What would the man down the road say? Would they judge the time that I've got or the position I've got as bad? It's an easy one to see why it happens, but it's also something I tend to be lifting people out of. Get away from the worry about social media. If you want to, I know people who don't go on Strava or have a Strava account because they know what they're like, and they'll just get into that vortex. If you're that extreme with how much it's affecting you, don't come off it. Or take a break from it.
And I think it's okay not to. I don't have any. I spend as little time on social media as possible. I don't share my Strava because, as you say, I'm one of those people that I would be sucked into it. And I think the danger of comparing yourself to other people where, I wouldn't compare myself to Gary. We're completely different. But we would if we were on Strava, and I'd be looking at the session he did, and I'd be like, and it would devalidate, I think. And I think a lot of people, he went faster than me, so therefore he's a better person than me. I think that's a narrative that lots of runners have, that if you run faster, in some ways you're a better person. Whereas I'm talking about it, we can say, well, that's ridiculous. We all know Eddie's a much nicer person than Gary.
Yeah, I think there's a serious point in here, and it comes back to my beef with people want the advice about strength and conditioning, and they'll go and find someone online or an expert, and like the expert says, this is what the pros do, you should follow this advice. And for psych, there's a lot of mindset people out there and people who are trying to offer sometimes good intentioned advice, but I'm looking at it and thinking, oh dear, that's a bit iffy. If I did that as a qualified psych, I would be wrapped across the knuckles. But what I want to try and get across, and this is sort of like my go-to, is like, I want to sort of democratize what I managed to go and do in my day job with swimming, and bring elite level sports psych work and mindset training to a wider audience. Where it comes to social media, protocols that we have to put in place in football teams and in athletics about stay off social media or take it away. But also we help train people to sort of be more on their journey. If you took two athletes who were of similar ability and you gave them exactly the same training prescription for 10 weeks, and they did exactly the same level of mileage, intensity and everything, and he said, right, go to the start line to go and see how quick you can both run. We know already, before we've even said the gun has gone, they're not going to finish with the same time. Because why? They're built differently. Their genetics are different. Their fast twitch and slow twitch fibers are different. Their nutrition and fueling's different. And so if we know in that thought experiment that two relatively similar ability athletes won't perform the same way, why would you think you and person X on Strava are going to have the same performance, or they're better than you? And you just break it apart like that, and then people just go, oh, I'm being a bit chimpy about that. And it's trying to again come back to that point. When you finish, do you want to be looking back at your career that you constantly compared yourself to Gary in the club, or do you want to be thinking, actually, I did some amazing times, had some sucky times, but overall it was a good use of my time. I got fit, I enjoyed myself, I've competed, got some great results? Or do you just want to be bitter at like, I was constantly on the social media and, I made my life hell? So it might be a little bit harsh medicine from me there, but I think it's a choice.
I loved that. I think so simple. You're on your own journey. You're on your own journey and it's nobody else's journey. And so I celebrate everybody else's journey and enjoy watching their journey and being part of their journey. But nobody's journey is your own. And if you can go back to that, keep that as your grounding, that this is my journey. And so that's something to be celebrated as well, whatever that journey looks like, as you said, highs and many, many lows.
It'd be tragic, wouldn't it, to look back, reflect, and all you've done is compare yourself to others. That would be, I think you've robbed so much joy there. We've got one more question from Patreon. Miri, how do I stop myself from not being proud of my achievements? When I finish a race, I always think, why am I not as fast as, or this took too long? It takes a few weeks to reflect and acknowledge what an achievement an ultra is. But why do I not feel that way straight away?
I think that we've kind of spoken quite a lot to that point, haven't we? And if you wanted a sound opinion on any subject, would you say that someone crossing the line of a race is that person? Now, I would put my hand up and say, I'm supposedly trained in the mind. I get supervision and therapy as part of my training, and I get well seen to. And I would definitely not be looking for good life advice when I've just finished a race. So why should you? Give yourself some grace. You've finished a race. You may have crossed the finish line and your legs are like jelly or lead. You might have vomited into a bin. You might feel epic even. Kind of just take it that it's an emotionally draining thing. Your battery is at its absolute lowest point. So it's not the right time to do complicated equations, lift heavy machinery, or do anything clever.
Cook a 3-course meal. Catch up on the laundry, anything.
If I am in the trenches, I always think, what would, Robbo, he's such a good cheerleader for me, or what would Lisa say to me? I'll try and think what their words would be instead of my maybe negative self-talk. I've got a question about injury. We've all been on the sidelines. Our mates and competitors, they are still training. You've probably got a race still in the books. Is there evidence that sports psychology can help with recovery?
Definitely. So let me just quickly come back to the point that you just said there about, how well you should be taking pride in what you're doing and your achievements. And I celebrate that. But going back to the question about injury, I've had it more than once where an athlete's been working with me, working towards a particular race or event, and then they get injured. They say, well, we're going to have to stop working together now because I'm injured. And I'm like, no, this is where we really probably should be doing more work.
Good stuff happens.
Well, I mean, obviously it's not good stuff because you're injured, and it can be very distressing because so many people who are doing, say, trail put so many hours in, and suddenly they've got a lot of time on their hands and they're not doing the thing that they really want to do and be outside. Definitely, this is where a lot more of my work is coming in. At the moment, on my roster of endurance athletes, I'd probably say half are injured. At different stages of the process. Someone near the beginning, some people now returning to full fitness, and everyone in between. We're not talking 100 people, just so people get a sense of that. But it's not surprising towards the end of the year where people have been putting their bodies under load that we're finding quite a few people crocked. Because endurance sport by its nature is one where you're pushing yourself and finding your limit, we're going to have injuries. Again, the elite mentality is one of that's part and parcel of what you're doing. Obviously, if it becomes constant and chronic, then you should probably look at is there something deeper underlying that? We see about REDS as a case in point, and we do see that in endurance sport. So there's the health warning. But if you're just standard athlete, you get injured. When I'm working with athletes I've got a little bit of a block of sessions which take you through the rehab journey. And the evidence says that if you work with the injury, one, you'll probably find the experience a lot more pleasant than if you're just mentally beating yourself up. Why did I get injured? Or it's unfair. Two, you can use training mentality we talked about earlier in your rehab. So going to do the S&C, the elliptical, the boring work, I try and find a way where you get some joy from it because, getting better, you're seeing improvements is slow rather than what you might get in normal training. And 3, like if you're stressed when you're injured, it releases things like cortisol, which inhibit the healing process. And I'm not saying you've got to go from being down in the dumps to some Pollyanna, oh, everything's great, but you've got to work with reality and take a different mindset perspective, a rehab perspective. And if you go in that sense, what I found is people, they feel supported, they feel like they're working towards something, they find the silver lining in the most mundane of physio work or rehab work, and they look back at the whole injury rehab as something more positive than they would have done before, and they come out of it feeling stronger. Often people can have an injury setback, think it's the worst thing ever, and actually it could be the making of them because they've dealt with it and they can push on in their performance.
I think having a plan is the key, isn't it? Any of my athletes ever have an injury with it, that first few weeks after, something they've faced the fear that they're going to have to stop what they love doing, and then they don't have a plan or you don't have a diagnosis. That's really hard for people. And then the minute people do have a little bit, whatever the plan is, some simple band exercises, some cross training, it really helps people mentally, like you say, to focus and to move forward. And I think the minute you sort of stop hyper focusing on that injury is almost when the healing starts as well. You sort of allow, like you say, that cortisol to come down and to relax. Stu, every week we ask our athletes for a workout of the week, perhaps their favourite intervals or their favourite run session that they look forward to. And we wondered, you can give us just your favourite workout of the week, but I wondered if you had a favourite mental workout, something very simple that people could do every week or before a session that makes that bit of difference to their mindset.
Yeah, I think first of all, go back to what I said before. If you're going training, a lot of people just, because they've got so much training to do, 6 days a week or whatever, they throw on their clothes, they walk out the door, run out the door. They just don't think about what they're doing. Today it's hills, go and do hills. If it's track, go and do track. But actually take that step before you even leave the house and say, what's this session for? What's the purpose? And then if it's for going fast, going, recovery, developing the base or whatever, and then what might be the more optimal way to think during the session, and how can I get more out of the session? That would be my tip. So you could do that. It doesn't matter what session you do. Go and practice that. See how it lands with you. It might work very well. You might just get frustrated with yourself, and you like going back to just following what the plan says. In terms of my own personal favourite session, I don't know if it's a favourite, but the one that came to mind is one that tends to be more of a summer thing. Is where you do 16 400s off about a minute. I don't like it. A session like that isn't one you should like, but there is a benefit. I mean, it's really Billy Basics. I'm not giving away state secrets here. Break it down to 4. You got 16, so you do 4 lots of 4 rather than 16 reps, and you go 1, 2, 3, 4. The second rep, 1, 2, 3, 4. And so on, and it just makes it go really quickly. And you do that session, and if you've hit your splits, especially if the weather's quite nice, you step off the green or the track and you feel like, yeah, that's a really good one. I've put something in there today. So I wouldn't say it's a favourite, but I certainly derive a lot of pleasure when it's been executed well.
Those VO2 max sessions as well, the mental, you have no other mental capacity apart from to live in that session. Like if you've got long tempo reps, you've got 8 minutes, even 5 minutes, the brain can stray and you can have a conversation with yourself. Whereas I think there's such a good mental challenge as well when you literally just have to you're in that rep. I've got to be in that rep. I can't think of the rep before. I can't think of the rep after. I think it's a great way to practice your racecraft as well, of like just being in that moment and nothing else matters apart from that breathing and surviving.
It's a good confidence builder if you execute it well. If you've done it how you wanted to and you've got good, decent, equal splits, you should be very, very proud of doing that session.
I'm trying to think, if you're not on the track,
this afternoon.
400, if you're not on the track,
I think
400s,
you can do 90 seconds, like 16
seconds.
by 19 seconds. You start with doing like 8 by 90 seconds. Like you don't need to do it on a track or 1 minute, 1 minute on, 1 minute off.
Or, transfer it to a hill, because often track work translates to hills, and obviously let's talk to our audience. You could, there's a hill session, what I used to do down the road from here. I think it was about 12 reps of 60 seconds. And again, the idea was you're running to a point. So if you've done the rep well, you get to the Chinese takeaway at the top of the hill. You walk back down to the garage and then like go back up. And the game's to try and, you know, get to the Chinese takeaway doorway and then like, you know, go back and not go too further beyond it or to finish before it.
I love a marker. I love a local marker. It's like my 30-mile-an-hour sign. It talks to me in my nightmares. It's like, get to the sign. Just look at the sign. The sign is coming.
I think I'll do my 10 times 3 minutes, to be honest, the 400s. Not a zone I like to be in. What is the rest of 2020? Well, we haven't got long for 2025, like, but yeah, 2026, professionally and athletics.
So I guess on talking to the Olympic work, April, we've got the British trials for the Commonwealth Games and the European Games. So even now I'm talking with athletes, right? Where are you at this start of the season? People have been back in the pool for about 6 weeks. So we get some really nice results from the swimmers. You know, they're hitting their paces, they're feeling good, but there's 5 months almost to the day till then. And it's like that long-term goal setting, but with quite a lot of competitions along the way where they can test themselves. So I'm using my usual methods with them. So getting to British trials is going to be a big professional one for me, because actually a lot of the swimmers say that the qualification for a Worlds or Europeans or Olympics is more stressful than the actual games themselves, because if you don't get on the plane, you don't get to go. So there's quite a lot of tension around that. So I'll be working on mentality and mindset with those guys. Continuing to grow Endurance Mind Coaching, the training business that I work in, where I work with trail runners and road runners and triathletes if people go down that avenue. Yeah, just kind of like that's the main two professional sport focuses that I've got, and hopefully stay fit. My birthday's in April. It's a big landmark one, and I want to be as fit as I can be when I hit that.
Super exciting. Should we do the quick five?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Stu, the chips are down. That box of fruit is vanishing from your grasps. Do you have a mantra that you would lean on yourself?
I'm thinking back to that Harrock Hill vegetable race, and a tip that a top British orienteer friend of ours gave was, and I used in the race, if you're neck and neck with someone and you're suffering, push on, because you might feel like you're the one who's weak and you're suffering, but if you're working hard, they're working just as hard. And I actually broke someone in the race with that in my head, like you're in pain, you're in bits, but he is too. And I just kept thinking that. And then when I look back, he'd like zinged off the back. So knowing that if I'm working super hard, any competitor is also, obviously if someone disappears off into the distance and you can't chase them, you know, they're much better than you. So, But if you're neck and neck with someone, that's a great little hack to use.
Yeah, I use that. Even at the lowest moments, I'll just think, yeah, everybody's suffering. If I am, pretty much everybody else is. Suck it up. Eddie and I, we come to Manchester. We've been out for a massive run and we're going to bang on your door.
One.
We are famished. Where are you going to rustle us up? Eddie's vegetarian and she doesn't like fish, so...
It's okay. I can pick the meat out. Gary, real. There's a recipe conundrum then.
What would I cook? I go to
Chinese takeaway.
Should we run through to a hill rep up there?
We've got quite a lot of Caribbean food around here. So anything like ackee saltfish or rice and peas is good. But if I was having to rustle up something that's like nourishing and like really good for you, I'd probably do a tomato dal.
Love a dal. That is good and quite quick. You know, let's just get this done because I'll get hangry.
What's on your Christmas list? Something for our listeners too, and it can't be the Psychology of Running book too.
You haven't even talked about that. Fine book. Available in English and Mongolian, seemingly. What's on the Christmas list? I haven't got any long running trousers at the moment. So I think
leggings, I think, is the word you're looking for.
Thank you.
There.
That's what leggings. Yeah. So I need a new pair of leggings. That's what Santa needs to bring me.
Oh, I don't know. I don't know about men's leggings. I was going to say go Sweaty Betty, but I'm not sure you're looking for the feminine cut. Gary, do you wear leggings? I don't think I've ever seen.
I try and hold on to the shorts for as long as possible. The only time I wear leggings, I think Tour de Helvan's a great example. You have to carry them for the race. So I think, well, if I'm carrying them, I might as well keep the legs toasty. I'm like the postie.
I cannot imagine. Do you? I cannot. I am in my shorts from September to probably June. Leggings, not shorts. I cannot imagine having my muscles out. Oh, this is just too cold.
Do you think you've got a sub-20 park run in you before the end of the year?
Great question. The only way I'm going to find out is train as hard as I can and go for it. and I'm there or thereabouts, and I'd love to.
What's your local park run?
A good tip to just lean into it, Stu. You've just got to lean into it and accept.
I've got to do the training. I've got to do the training.
You've got to do the training. Yeah,
we're a mile away from
16
here.
400s.
We've got Alex Park Run, which is a really good one just down the road from here. It's a good place to give it a crack.
How many people do they turn up at that park run? Is it like hundreds?
Oh yeah. I mean, it's not unusual for 400-500 to be there.
Excellent. 5K. I think of all the races, you've just got to get it right from the off. If you go too fast, your legs are in quicksand. And if you go too slow, you don't usually make that time up at the end. Fascinating. No, I'll be refreshing the power of 10, Stu. See how you get on. Instagram story music time. Every week we share this podcast over on Instagram, and you get to pick the music that we put to our Instagram post and story. What's it going to be?
And is it like supposed to be a running specific?
Whatever you want.
No, nobody. People go all sorts of genres.
I would have gone for something electronic and cool a few years ago, but these days the car music stereo is hijacked by the kids, so it would probably be a song from Spider-Man or Fireman Sam. And actually, as my son,
you're in the Fireman Sam space. I love that space.
And I was in a world of pain 2 years ago doing a club race in London, and for some reason my brain went to singing the Fireman Sam theme tune. It got me through a really difficult mile. So you can have the Fireman Sam theme tune.
Fireman, there you go. I didn't expect that.
Like I said, I've changed.
We've all changed. I wondered that because when my kids, when I pick them up from school now, the teenagers are like, "Can put my music on." So it's just for ease. I'm like, and often they do put some bangers on, and they put on tunes that I think we were dancing to in nightclubs back in the 2000s, and they're like, "Do you know this song, Mum?" I'm like, "Yeah, I do." But our parents never let us do that. They would never have let me sit in the car and put my own music on.
Can you imagine that?
We'd have had
no way.
No, we'd have had some sort of Kate Bush or something.
Been the Eagles and the Beatles and Elvis. I think that's what.
Yeah, loads of that sort of stuff with Beach Boys occasionally was let in.
Did the Wiggles still go? Mr. Tumble, are they still kicking around?
Oh yeah, that's there. Luckily we don't get on the stereo, so that's why Fireman Sam wins.
Yeah. I loved our Fireman Sam. We had such a Fireman Sam phase. Then it went into a bit of Thomas the Tank Engine as well, of course, and then Batman, and
I'm going to go and put CBBS on now.
No, not in the day.
No, not now. When you're in it, you're like, oh my God, no thanks. Stu, it's been such a joy. Let's do this again. It was amazing. We hardly touched the surface, but I reckon lots of people will be listening, and probably just like me and Gary, like you just take a little snippet of something that you identify with that, and you probably find that with the athletes you work in, and it's a game changer to just think of something that might just turn that switch on in your mind, help you a little bit on a hard session, just help you get out for a run, or just help you celebrate your run a little bit as well. And a lot of it is like concurs with a lot of what we say on the podcast as well, which makes me really happy about making no big decisions, being kind to yourself. You can't compare yourself to anybody. So everybody, if you're listening, we're all on the right track, but sometimes we just need a little bit of sensible Stu advice to keep us there. We will put deets of his book on Facebook and in the show notes as well. And good luck with all the future endeavours. Good luck to all your athletes. You're working towards some mega goals next year. And when we see them winning all those medals at Commonwealth Games and then the Olympics, we'll say, I know. That's down to that guy. He's on that podcast.
It's a team effort. It's not down to me.
Thanks for your time, Stu. Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.